Boom, there we go. Join us today, Peter Rosenberg, the incomparable radio personality, journalist, and I guess now wrestling advocate. Is that fair to say?
I'm more than an advocate, but yes, I am an advocate. You know what? I actually like the word advocate. I am that.
Yeah. Congratulations on the release of Real Late.
Thank you very much. I'm excited about having you out in the world.
Word up, man. I enjoyed the listen quite a bit, man. It's Connoisseur rap to a T. It's all the kind of rap that I like. Can you walk us through what it's like putting together a rap album and not being a rapper?
Well, yeah, I can certainly do that better than I can being a rapper, of which I've heard about that process many times, seen it some, but don't know. But and thank you for Connoisseur rap. I like that terminology much better than because I know that you're up on all the artists of today, but a lot of people are not. So their way of talking about it is almost in these unintentionally dismissive terms, like, yo, it's retro, it's 90s, and I truly don't consider it to be that. And I understand why people think that, because they haven't listened to rap like that since the 90s. But it's not, it doesn't sound like 90s rap. It to me, it sounds like very right now. So I appreciate using Connoisseur. But the process was basically deciding on the general artists I wanted to target, and then getting beats from producers who were interested in the idea. And then I would get a bunch of beats from each producer, go through each pack of beats, pick the ones that just jumped out to me that I personally loved. Then from that, each beat, say, who would I most like to get on this song? And then start the process of trying to make that happen. And if it fell, if at first you don't succeed, try again until you get the people on the song that work. And then at that point, when you have everyone's vocals, putting those vocals together, coming up with, any sort of little extras that are needed, the order. Sometimes a bar is messed up, needs to be corrected. Sometimes someone's verse isn't long enough, it ends weird, whatever it may be. And then, using an engineer and my buddy who's a mixer, and taking those pieces we have and turning them into the final product.
Sounds just like a rapper, except for the rapping part.
It is. It's similar, man. It's funny because people it's been an overwhelmingly positive experience, more so than anything I've ever been a part of, in terms of the desired audience's reaction to it has been really almost 100% positive. But when I would search my name to see what people were saying, the only negative thing that would come up that sort of gets your goat is like, what does he even do? It's like, this is nothing. Yeah, great. You got rappers who are awesome and put them on songs. And, I'm always like, but don't you often hear great rappers on shitty songs? That happens all the time. Like, what are you talking about? Like, why? How do you not understand? But people don't. People don't know what an A&R is. They don't have any. And I think people hate on Khaled a lot because of his, his brash style in which he takes credit. And I think what he's done for other DJs has been great. I think he's opened a lot of doors in terms of people being open to this kind of thing. But on the flip side, I think there's a lot of blowback because people don't understand what Khaled does either. And because he's so in front, it angers them for some reason. I don't quite get it.
Yeah, I equate some of that to, not to go too far into hip hop history. But I mean, that's kind of what Suge Knight said about Diddy. He was kind of like, essentially saying the executives should be behind the scenes and the artists should be up front. I think people ironically have an issue with Khaled doing that, especially since we're in such a everybody's up front era. Everybody's turning on their phone and taking selfies all day. People can understand it.
Dude, that's a really good point. It's like the whole world is about taking credit for nothing, for just listening to songs. People are getting credit for listening to a song. They're filming themselves listening to the song. And yet the person who came up with the idea, they're an asshole because they want to get in front. The funny part for me is that when I read and it's not too much of it, but you know, everyone who puts out music is super sensitive. But like for me, I'm like, I'm not even in the forefront. The only thing that's really in the forefront is my name. I did use my name because I wanted credit for this. I wanted to do something and have it be mine. But like my voice isn't on the songs. I didn't even like I have drops that I use on my radio show. I opted against even using the drops on the song. I didn't want to turn off other DJs who might want to play the song and don't want to have a DJ's name on the song. So, you know, a couple artists gave me shout outs on it, but it was a pretty background sort of thing, you know, and my shout out to my girlfriend who saved my ass because I could not come up with a cover idea. And I wanted to do a like collage of like photos. I know it's funny. It was only 3 months ago and now it sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it was like a collage of photos from my life that sort of led me to here. And she was like, no one wants to see a collage of your white childhood friends. No one cares. What are you? She was like, that's no one's going to want to share that. Like, that's not. And I was like, oh, yeah. I was like, but I'm not even going to be on the album. She was like, don't worry about it. Just trust me. And then I was like, oh, yeah, you're a photographer. You have any good pictures in New York? She was like, how about this one? I was like, let's make that the cover instead. And there we go.
It definitely gives it like a late show feel. You know what I mean? I think I feel like this is something I could see Colbert sitting in front of, you know, and I think that still ties in well to, you know, what most people know about you. Like it definitely does feel like a production, like a show with the image of New York. You know what I mean?
That's cool. And it is also quietly sort of the same color scheme to some degree of my Complex show that I did a couple years ago called Open Late. It is like the same colors and stuff like that. You're right though, and she was right. The shareability is so much better, and I mean, my girl, her on Instagram, her name's Miss Hatton. She has more followers than I do, and her following is because she takes dope pictures of the city. So her entire career is a testament to the fact that people like sharing pictures of New York. Like New York's its own thing, and it's where my show lives. And I was like, do you have any nighttime photos? And she was like, well, I have this one ill one where the Empire State Building's lights are off, which isn't very often that their lights are off. So if you look, you see the Empire State Building, but it's not lit. It's lit kind of behind the Empire State Building. So she was just 100% right that upped the shareability. And when I look on Twitter and Instagram tags or stories, whatever, I see that a lot of people post the cover and you wonder, would they have done that if it would have been me? And part of my process has been like understanding that not everyone, there are a lot of people who have grown to not like me for one reason or another. One thing I've said, a feud with their favorite artist, whatever that moment was that made them say, you know, I don't really fuck with Rosenberg, but that's what my hope with this album was to just give those people the but. It's not that I don't really care about winning them over on a personal level. If they made judgment on who I was, I understand it. We all hear people say things. You don't know someone's entire life story. It's fine. But what I do want is credit for my ear and for putting on dope artists, which I have always worked hard to do now for longer than even I've been at Hot 97. For going back to my college radio days, I've always tried to be a vessel to put on dope artists. So even if people can't stand me, I wanted them to say this record is dope. And I think the whole package, learning and accepting that some people feel that way. And as a result, don't shove yourself down their throat. Give them music that they can't deny. Like, I don't even fucking like this guy, but this Styles P Ransom Smoke Dizza record, like, I can't deny that. And I think that I'm really pleased with how that has kind of played out since it came out.
I think you have a number of tracks on here that I think are interesting for a broad range of reasons. The Next Chamber, Method Man, Raekwon, and Willie The Kid. I mean, that Method Man verse to me is crispy. I think he's one of the rappers who's been rapping better than ever. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it coincides with him not smoking weed anymore, you know, or smoking weed less maybe. But the way he cuts through the track on that is just special. And Willie The Kid is someone I don't think gets enough credit. How did you come about putting those Willie The Kid on there with the Wu Legends?
So Willie the Kid is, is just an artist I've been playing. And I always, whenever I talk about the album, I got to shout out my boy, Mark Rosado, aka at Top Shelf Premium, who's a vintage clothes dealer here in New York, who has a mixtape series called Off Top. It's like a freestyle series where cats come rap in his store. And so he's kind of been A&Ring my radio show for the last couple of years, where he sends me music every week, which really improved my show because, I'm 41 years old. I have mad jobs. I went through a divorce. Before that, I was married. Like there's mad shit going on. And I lost my ability to stay in touch all the time. And at some point, rather than just throw my hands up and fade away, I was like, why don't I utilize someone who actually is completely still dialed in? Like that's the key. And Willie was one of the artists whose music he started playing me. And I'd seen his name. Unlike many others, I'd seen his name and I knew he was around, but wasn't up on the music that he'd done with V-Don and all these different people that he was doing. So he just became an artist I started playing. Lo and behold, he was connected to a good friend of mine named Big Cac in Atlanta. They were already super cool, had done work together. And so long story short, he'd come on my show. I was like, yo, bro, I'd love to send you a song for my album. He was like, for sure. I heard this beat. I thought of Meth and Ray, and I wanted to get a young guy on it. I thought he would sound great on it. I sent it to him. Naturally, when he already knew Meth and Ray were on it. So when I sent it to him, it was back in like 10 seconds because it was already, when people already see that there's legends on it, it becomes super easy. And he's also just a hard worker. And then lo and behold, he's like, yo, I actually already, he was like, I'm related to Law the Dark Man. I was like, what? He was like, that's my brother. Law the Dark Man's my older brother. And for people listening right now who don't know, Law the Dark Man's original Wu-Tang affiliate from the late 90s. So it ended up having, in a random way, this sort of Wu connection. But I just think Willie the Kid's dope, man. He's got a club out in Grand Rapids. He has an alcohol line, champagne and wine. Like he's really doing his thing. He's a great example of these days. You don't need to be a superstar to do really well in music. You just need to have your following, and he's one of those dudes.
Another joint, Snake Eyes. I think the timing is great for the song title. I'm not sure if that was serendipitous or not, but the movie is coming out, and he was my favorite G.I. Joe. 2, the Jim Jones verse was great, and I feel like Jim Jones A&R'd this next question. His verse opens with, Capo asked Rosenberg about our very first encounter. He was talking slick shit. That could have been his worst encounter. What's he talking about?
Well, 2 things. Shout outs to Jim Jones. He bodied it. Also, didn't know till right now that Snake Eyes was coming out as a movie. I actually named it after a move that The Undertaker does, because I did not have a name for this song until the very last minute. But Jim Jones and I have a long relationship, and it goes back. The story he's telling was when I first got on Hot 97, Cypher Sounds and I were talking about the MTV Top 10 MC list, and I said something slick and offhanded about him not being deserving of the list at the time. And he let me know in no uncertain terms that slander like that would not stand in his city. It was an early lesson for me that people really hear you when you're on Hot 97. Like, you're not in Kansas anymore. Like the people will hear you, and you can just have a loose conversation if you want, but know that people will hear those loose conversations. So that's the story behind that. But I love that too. It really kind of sums me up well. Like what DJ makes an album, and on one of the songs, the artist talks about almost whooping that DJ's ass. Like, it really sums up my time in hip hop well. But at the same time, we have a great relationship, and he delivered a great verse, And I really think he has kind of one of the sleeper verses of the album. And, if you pay attention to everything he says, it's a really dope verse. And first time that Jones and Ghostface are on a record together. Crime Apple's in the middle, and Crime Apple's a dude who, has a lot of buzz on his own, and he's his whole own thing. So, like, that's what I like about the project in some ways. Like, a song like that, you have 3 potential different fan bases who can enjoy that song for their artist. get put on to other artists and may not even realize, like, if you're a Ghostface fan or a Jones fan, you may not know who Crime Apple is and not even know that he has his whole own thing in his own world where he's super popping. And then I think there are Crime Apple fans who are going to hear him be like, oh shit, Jim Jones can rap like that. Because Jim Jones, I wonder if you agree, I think he's doing some of the best rapping of his career right now. So I thought it was really cool to have him on that record.
100%, you know, and, you know, I think he's one of the artists I think about when I think about how there isn't an end to dope, right? Like dope isn't tied to when maybe you are on the most magazine covers. You can push your pen as far or as long as you're living. And he's one of those cats to me who's doing that. I mean, I think he had a great 2020. It feels like he's doing them. I liked, he was on B-Dot the other day, challenging cats, you know, stamping his success right now. And I think that's warranted.
Yeah, I think you put it really well. There's no time limit to dope. And yeah, he's absolutely an example of that. And that's one of the things I was trying to push with this album too, is like, I'm gonna do everything I can to end this stupid conversation of rap is a young man's game, you know. And maybe it's me bringing my white privilege into the way I view hip hop, which is that as growing up as a kid whose parents listened to mostly like white artists, like there wasn't a lot of soul music in my house, sadly, until I started and my brother started listening to it. All the artists we listened to as kids were not young. Like that wasn't even a thing. Like, you know, Paul Simon's Graceland, that's my favorite Paul Simon album. He put out Graceland, I think, when he was like 44. And by the way, he announced he stopped touring last year at like 79 or 80. But between 44 and 70 was one of the great runs of his career. Like and by the way, keep in mind, Paul Simon was huge in his 20s. It's not like he got big at 44. He was huge in his 20s, but he kept going. And when Graceland comes out, it becomes this like worldwide smash. I have no reason to believe that hip hop should be any different. There's any logic that people have of like, yeah, but rap's different. I'm sorry, why? Like, why is rap different than rock in this regard? It's not. I mean, music is music. And if you're making dope music, you're making dope music. The problem I think we get caught up in is the artists often want to stay cool to 16-year-olds. So they're trying to move in a way that will be appealing to kids who have a very unsophisticated ear. I mean, let's just keep it real. Most 16, 17-year-olds don't have a sophisticated ear. They want to hear what's hot in the club. I get it. That's fantastic. If you chase that your whole career, yeah, you're not going to do well, and it will be a young man's game. But if you're comfortable in your own skin and you just keep doing what you do what Lloyd Banks just did the same week I came out and drop a great album. You do what Rick Ross has done his whole career, which is just make the music that's comfortable for you. And no one even thinks about that Ross is in his mid-40s. Like, that's not even really a thought. I mean, listen, Drake is already relatively old for rap. Drake, he's number one. He's the number one guy. You know, Wayne is in his late 30s. So we need to, and I hope we will, kind of stop having that feeling of like when a rapper puts out an album after 40, it's like a sympathy project.
It's kind of crazy to me that Lil Wayne is a millennial. You know, I feel like he's been around for 20 years and he's a millennial. Like most of the rappers I grew up with weren't millennials. You know, they were.
That is a great. He was that young.
X. He was that young. Yeah,
I know.
It's amazing.
When I said Lil Wayne and then I said late 30s, I was like, actually, it doesn't sound that old. But for Wayne, it is old because he was 14.
Right. Another joint that I think stands out on here is Dear by Homeboy Sandman. It's the closing track. He took an approach to a narrative that I think stands out. It's unique on this project. But you were the person who played him, if I'm not mistaken, you gave him his first Hot 97 spin when he was just figuring it out. And so I appreciated seeing him on this album. Can you talk about your relationship with Homeboy Sandman and why he was right for this album?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for asking about him. First of all, a lot of people have mentioned that song, and I had questions about it because I loved it right away. Like, I absolutely adored that song. Grim Doza produced it. You know, it's just it's Sandman's an artist. Like he hears music and then wherever it takes him is where he goes. And on Dear, he tells like this it's sort of this like stream of consciousness thoughts about life kind of record. And as time went on, I kept listening to it. I just kept loving it. I'm like, yo, it's crazy because there's no chorus really. There's a hook at the beginning, the end, but there are memorable parts throughout the song. He says these things that like have almost a Kanye quality of like, you know, Kanye doesn't need a chorus, but everyone sings the parts in the middle of the song that you remember because they're catchy. Sandman actually does that in a way on this song, but it also didn't fit with a lot of the rest of the album sonically, which is why I put it last. And it was going to be a bonus track, but I didn't like the idea of calling it a bonus because I feel like you're sort of hamstringing a record when you do that. You know, when you call it a bonus, it makes some people not want to listen to it the same way. Sandman is a real friend of mine. He came up to me and gave me a CD when I first moved here. We just talked about it the other day, but like he gave me a CD, and on the first CD that he gave me, I think he had a song called Airwave Air Raid. And the first words on the song, I think, are fuck Hot 97, something like that. It's something like fuck Hot. He doesn't curse anymore, but there was something like fuck Hot 97 was like the first words he said. And I played that song on the radio. And he told me we had a little celebration dinner the night the album came out. And he said he remembered like that was the moment when he knew like, oh, this is a real dude right here. Like took it and was like, I'm not going to run away from this. Let's play it. This shit's hot. And that built that was just the beginning of us building a relationship over years. You know, he's an incredible artist who's only gotten better. Like he's someone, you know, who I could see in his 40s getting to a bigger level than he was ever at prior before, just because the right moment can happen. You know, I recently heard someone say that one great decision can make up for a lot of bad ones. And I'm not saying that he's made bad ones, but he lives on his own. Like he lives by his own rules. So he decides that he wants to be as indie as he's going to be. He does what he's going to do. Sometimes he goes to another country for a year. You know, that's just what he does. He goes to another city for a year. That's just what he does. And he has never prioritized like, I'm going to be successful in music. That's not how he lives life. That's why that line at the end of the song, the sample from my radio show, when I say, could you picture yourself in another world where you end up being just a rambling crazy man on the street? And he says, it could be this world. Like, that's because that's the way he lives life. So if he were to at some point stumble into the right record or make a decision about his career where he wanted to be more of like a professional musician in a traditional sense, he's the kind of guy who I could see really blowing up and people like, yo, how long has this dude been around? And those of us who pay attention, it's like, this guy's been around forever, you know? And he really, really raps. I enjoyed that dinner that night. He was sitting next to Styles P and getting to watch them talk. They didn't know each other at all, you know? Sandman probably barely knows Styles P's music. Like he knows the biggest Locks records, but like, that's it. Like he's not. And yet they both are vegan and they both are like rappers who can rap forever in every way humanly possible. And I got a real kick out of seeing them just talk as human beings, knowing that they didn't know each other at all.
Yeah, that's actually a crazy scene. Sandman, Boy Sand, and Styles P.
Yep.
At dinner. I've never thought in my life about those two sitting down.
Yeah, and Flea Lord was in the conversation for much of it too. It's a very random combination.
Flea Lord to me is on fire. Like to me, I think Flea Lord, especially with, you know, the success of Griselda and ancillary connecting artists around there. Flea Lord was incredible on his Soul Assassins project he just put out with DJ Muggs. He steals a lot of verses from people on his guest appearances. I think he's got incredible ear for other talent, other artists.
He does.
you know, Hallways with Roc Marciano and Flea Lord, excuse me. That's another fan favorite from what I've noticed so far.
Yeah, that was crazy. And I really think, like, first of all, having Marcy on the album is a complete honor. Obviously, it sort of solidified the project, in my opinion. You know, just having him on there it made the project official. And he obviously bodied Hallways. The question would be, how is Flea Lord going to do on a track like that? Shouts to Disco Vietnam, who produced it. It's not a straightforward track to rap on at all. And I was like, I didn't really know what Flea Lord would do. And to your point, I'm not saying he stole it, but he absolutely held his own with Roc Marcy on it. And it was very impressive. Like, the second I heard the verse he did, starts at, you know, my fur coat is heroin gray. He just like has this, and he even changes his Lord that he always does before he raps. It sounds different on this beat because it's a different tempo. It's like, he's underrated as a rapper. And I think part of that is because he puts out so much material, 12 albums last year, you know, an album a month for a year. You know, he sees the business. He's the exact opposite of Homeboy Sandman. It's a business. It's a business. And the way that Flea Lord makes money in this business is by flooding the market with an insane amount of work. That's what he does. And that is a very different approach than we're seeing right now simultaneously with, say, a Makami or a Ural Droog, the God Fahim, people who are moving in these ways that are incredibly calculated. Like, I don't do interviews. I don't even do songs. I just exist in the universe. Flea Lord, he'll do an interview, he'll do the verse, he does it all. And they're both two very different approaches that I think can get you to the same place if you do it well. And yeah, I agree with you, man. I think Flea he's awesome. And he also was a big part of this project too, because he got Roc Marcy on the record. I had not been in direct contact with Marcy about the project. Like, we've been in contact over time periodically, but he got him on the project. And now where we sit, this will be airing starting tomorrow? Where will this be? When will this be available?
Yeah, I'll put up a piece tomorrow, and then I'll put up another piece on Tuesday. What's the Wednesday now? Tomorrow, and then another piece on Monday. So we'll have two parts to it. Okay.
Well, and because of Flea Lord doing what he did, now I got Roc Marcy on the Summer Jam Festival stage. So all these things happen because of that. And, you know, we just announced that at Summer Jam on festival stage, I'm going to close out the festival stage with Roc Marcy, Conway, Flea Lord, Stove God Cooks, and Vel the Wonder. And I don't know if any of that comes together if Flea Lord isn't so instrumental in getting Marcy on the project.
Word up. That's a good look. That's a great look for all of us.
Listen, I hope so, man. Like that, again, it's another thing that's just a look. And I hope the fans of it show up, you know, because it's going to be great no matter what to be out there in front of 10,000 people for these artists. Like, it's a great experience. But I hope that when we go on there, that the people who appreciate it are up in front. You know what I mean? And people come out there to support Roc Marcy. Because one of those things, everyone always says, well, when will Hot 97 do that? When would people support this? So then, like, you know, people make efforts. Like, they didn't, in the case of Hot 97, they didn't need to put my set on Summer Jam. They didn't. They're not playing my songs like that. They're doing it on the love. They're doing it on the love. And I told them, I'm like, yo, it'll be a good look. It's a good look for our station to make sure we have artists like this on our bills. Like, that's just how I see it. And when I used to be involved with Festival Stage more, it was always like that. I haven't been involved with it in a few years. And shout out to TT Torres at the station who's pulling together the stage. She approved it. And now the artists are there, and hopefully the cats who support music like that will buy a ticket, come out, enjoy those acts. And then, you know, hey, get ready. After you enjoy the underground hip hop outside, you could go inside and just chill, sit back, and watch what the commercial cats are doing. Because that's the thing that I think sometimes cats in our lane of hip hop don't do enough of. The artists do, but the fans don't, which is they get so bogged into this that they don't look up to be like, but yeah, don't you want to see what Lil Baby's doing? Don't you want to know what Meg Thee Stallion's doing? It may not be what you're listening to, but to ignore the importance of this stuff that's culturally moving things right now, to me, it's ignorance. You don't want to do that. So to me, it'll be a dope opportunity. Come out for Roc, Marcy, Conway, all those cats, and then stick around and enjoy a mainstream show.
Word up. I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out Rasheed Chappell. I think he's been doing great raps for a long time. I think he shined on this project as well.
Shouts to Rasheed Chappell, bodied it. Yep.
And then also, Mind Over Matter was the sleeper to me on this project. I mean, that one, I found myself starting with that one and then pressing shuffle a lot more. That's Jay Nice and Ito. And just looking at the track list, I've got my favorites, and I'm looking at which ones I want to hear, different orders and things like that. But that one right there, to me, it's got more replay value than I think the name recognition that's on it. Can you talk about that song a little bit?
Yeah, and that's so funny you say that. Someone hit me about Mind Over Matter today. I hit Jay Nice very early on. I was like, hey, bro, I know this is crazy to you. A lot of people are telling me this is the best song on the project. And that song was really anchored by my boy Mark. He played me beats. I was like, oh, I like this one, which is a Benji Socrates beat. He was like, what do you think about Jay Nice and Ito for this? I was like, I'm good with it. Let's do it. Like that one didn't even have a lot of thought. It was like, let's see what they do. And then Jay Nice did 2 verses. Ito did the one. Considered moving the verses and putting Ito in the middle, but it didn't sound right. So I basically just left it as it is. That's one of the records that barely got touched. And they really, I know. Hey, by the way, it's a great thought. It's amazing what a chorus does. Like, it's amazing when an artist just gives you a pretty simple, straightforward chorus. But Jay Nice, cooking like Sam because a change gonna come. That line to the more casual fan stands out as like a bar. Like, he had a few things like that, which to me were very simple, light work for him, but that people really quoted when he said, how we lose Kobe and gain COVID in the same year. That line resonates with people. That line really resonates with people. And so I'm with you, man. Mind Over Matter is an absolute standout to me. Shouts to Jay Nice and Ito. I haven't even talked to Ito this entire process. I reached out to him. I called him. The phone number I had for him didn't work. So Ito, if you see this, shout out to you, bro. I appreciate you being on this. Jay Nice and I talked, and I called him and just thanked him. And listen, he's in Delaware, he's in Delaware. Like, and you're right. You see those names on the project. They may have the least name recognition to people who don't know. I mean, people know Ito and Jay Nice if you're into Connoisseur rap. Like, if you're really in it, you know them. But for other people, they don't. And you're right. It may have some of the best replay ability on the whole joint.